It's a beautiful evening for a garden tour. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and tonight I'm going to take you for a tour through my home garden and show you all the things that we've got planted for this spring, going into summer, as well as some of the perennials and shrubs that are currently blooming. So let's go ahead and take a walk through my garden. We'll start off here at the front of the house, which we always normally do, and I want to show you all the aquapots that have been in place. So this aquapot here has new varieties in it for 2025. So as I get more familiar with the names of the plants, I will introduce them to you. But I just kind of want to show you a starting point so that you can see kind of where the plants all started at to where they progress to throughout the summer. We have our bubblegum supertunias here planted in the ground in our pot in the pot system. Basically, we bury one 10-inch pot in the ground, plant up another 10-inch pot, and drop that inside of the one that's in the ground as a placeholder. We do that so we don't have to dig in the stones every year. It keeps them looking nice and tidy, and we can transfer these petunias easily out in the fall and transfer mums in with just a simple pulling the pot out and putting a new pot in action. It's fun to see. If you haven't seen it, our fall cleanup videos where we just roll these petunias up like carpet and dispose of them. In the front corner there on the left, we've got another aquapot planted up, and we've got the new alocasia. That's a new alocasia for 2025. That's the Emerald Isle. So we'll watch that as it continues to grow throughout the summer just to see how big it gets. We have that planted in with some of the new supertunias for 2025 and also some super bells. And I believe that's the Coral Sun super bell that's in there right now. Hanging baskets, we went pretty simple this year. Just did some hot pink geraniums along with the super bells pink lemonade. Just trying to keep it simple, and we'll see once how they do. The thing with geraniums is they do require some deadheading about every week just to keep the flowers looking fresh. But that's something that we'll just have to get out here and do to keep them producing more flowers and keeping them looking fresh. On either side of the entryway here, we've got the two aquapots that we planted up, and we've got the new salvia for 2025. It's a beautiful new white one, so we'll see how that does. We'll see if the hummingbirds like it. Also, we have the Supertunia saffron finch, along with the nemesia, air romance mulberry, and then some of the super bina tucked in there, some of that purple. That's the amethyst. So we'll watch and see how that continues to fill out and grow throughout the summer. We have the pot I always do for shade tucked in here on the front porch. We're westward facing, so this area stays pretty much shady all the time. In the center there, we've got the Senecio angel wings, a beautiful velvety silver plant, along with some Selenia apricot begonias. There's some Bossa Nova white begonias in there. And then we have a few upright fuchsias as well. And I anticipate this pot's probably going to get about 18 to 20 inches by the end of the summer. So we'll see how that progresses as well as the season goes along. The lilac tree is finished flowering now, so this is going to get trimmed back. It's getting quite big. So it's important that you trim your lilacs after they're done blooming. That way you're not going to sacrifice your blooms for the following season. So as soon as your lilacs are done blooming, go ahead and give them a nice trim, and that will have you sitting in a nice place for flowers for the next year. Under the lilac, we have the Anna's Magic Ball arborvitae, and there are 5 of them underneath of here, and they've been in here for several years, at least 10 if not 12 years. So these are very mature specimens, and at this point they've kind of all grown together. They're about 30 inches tall and about 36, maybe 40 inches wide. Walking along the side of the house, we planted some Supertunia saffron finch. I wanted to see how these would do in the landscape. I really wanted to put them in front of the house, but Rod said let's first try them off to the side to see how they perform. These are not a vista, but they're a beautiful Supertunia. So we wanted to see how they would compare to the vistas in the front, and see if this is something we could consider next year for in the front of the house, because I think the yellow and the teal would look really nice together. Bunch of hydrangeas here planted along the house, so not blooming yet at all. Also, we've got some Pugster blue butterfly bush right there. That's not blooming yet neither. We did have to take the hydrangea next to the air conditioner and trim it way back last year. because it was probably 6-7 foot tall and was kind of getting in the way of the air conditioner. So it was trimmed back to about 24 to 36 inches. It's coming back really nicely. So we'll just have to keep the size in check so that it doesn't get in the way of the airflow for the air conditioning unit. Continuing around, more hydrangeas, flowers yet to come. We've got the Invincible Blush here, and you can see there's buds forming, which is encouraging. So hopefully by the end of June, we'll be seeing beautiful pink flowers on this plant. Kind of nestled in here next to the tree to make my way through. We've got some irises. This is the Iris variegata. These are amazing. They smell like grapes. I love the smell of this iris. Hosta Sage is a big one, and it fills in this space in the garden really nicely. Tucked back against the house there is the Weigela. That is the Snippet Lime blooming. I believe this one's been discontinued. There is Snippet Pink, but if you're looking for a low growing Weigela, this would be, that Snippet series would be a great one. There's also some hellebore there, Linton Rose. Those flowers are done and spent, but they still look kind of pretty, so we leave them on in the garden. Allium bulbs. These are the Allium gigantica. I love the fun and whimsy look of these. These are a bulb, not an actual plant. So if you are looking for this look in the garden, you'll want to look in the bulb section for large alliums. Front of the border, we've got some dianthus. This is the Paint the Town dianthus. I think we've got maybe Paint the Town red and Paint the Town magenta, I think. And they're just starting to bloom. I love the Paint the Town dianthus because they're so compact in size. And even though they're compact in size, there's just such a vibrant splash of color. I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about this plant anymore. For those of you who know, you know. This is my Alstroemeria Inca Ice, and this plant is a monster. So obviously it's spread. It's about 4 foot wide by about 3 foot wide right now. And it's going to get about 24 to 30 inches tall. The reason why I'm saying I don't know if I should talk about this is because this plant has been discontinued and no longer can be found virtually anywhere on the market. This is, to be honest, one of the favorite plants in my garden because once it starts flowering, it flowers until like almost November with its beautiful peachy flowers. Alstroemeria are also known as Peruvian lilies, and they make a great cut flower as well. So as this starts to flower up, I'll show you and you'll see what all the hype is about and why people are wishing that plant was still available on the market. Tucked under the deck, we've got a lot of color coming from the hostas. There's a lot of giant hostas underneath here. Also some bleeding heart are tucked in just to give some of that early spring color. Hosta Liberty is this beautiful yellow here in the center. Somebody's going to ask me or tell me, well, this isn't Hosta Liberty because Hosta Liberty has white edges. While that is true, when the plant first starts emerging, it's got yellow edges. As the summer goes along, this plant will lighten up to white with its kind of a gray-blue center. Here's a clematis that's done blooming. That was really pretty. One of the earlier blooming clematis. Some more hostas, just giant and just so impressive, I think, for their sheer size and what they do here under the deck. Hydrangea limetta, plant under the windows there. That will be blooming midsummer. In this area here, there's a lot of color you're seeing from the Paint the Town dianthus again. As you can see, we've planted a lot of this in the garden, and it's so impressive. Some cat's pajamas Nepeta there, kind of nestled around that Dutch boy and girl. There's a lot of columbine blooming in this garden right now too, and these are all kind of, we're going to call them volunteers, or they seeded themselves, which I do love columbine, so I don't tend to pull these random little seedlings out because I do think that they're kind of pretty how they kind of tuck in and find their own little place in the garden. Sure. Here's some salvia. We'll put the name up on the screen. Really pretty, a very pale light blue. Some more columbine. And as you can see, here's a whole nother row, a whole nother beautiful splash of color from the Paint the Town dianthus. Veronica, purple perfusion down there at the bottom, tucked in. Amsonia ice blue. Some more columbine. Now that I'm seeing all this columbine though, this is kind of a lot. So maybe I will be pulling some of this out, because every columbine you see here has seed pods, and those seed pods are going to create even more plants. Right plant, right place. I'm okay with a little bit of this, but as I'm continuing the walk, I'm seeing there's a lot of it going on, and I don't want a whole lot more. Clematis planting. People often ask me, how many clematis do you plant together? So on this obelisk, it's a four-sided structure. Actually, it was a windmill at one time. I have 4 clematis planted, 1 on each side. The reason I do that is because that way if one's not blooming, maybe another one will. So if we plant 4 of them on there, the chances of me having color in this corner throughout the season is going to be far greater than if I just planted 1 plant on here. Some more salvia. Actually, I think this one is called Perfect Perfusion. This is the one I was questioning myself on earlier. Perfect Perfusion, and then Perfusion White. We've got the morning light grass tucked in there between some columbine, and also our Tough Stuff hydrangea. So for those of you who kind of follow and question on the Tough Stuff hydrangea, this is what it's currently looking like. It's about 3.5 foot tall. My garden is a zone 6A here in Michigan. And look at the buds. So this plant has been pretty reliable for us for the past, I don't know, 10 or 12 years since it's been planted, with its first round of blooms. And then later on in the season, what we call berries, it's dead. So once these flowers here are done flowering, it sends up some new growth and gives us a whole nother round of flowers. So this is a reblooming hydrangea, the Tough Stuff series, and they're quite hardy here in our Michigan garden. We're going to head on over here to the circle garden and talk about the plants that are in here. And kind of, for those of you who faithfully watch year after year, I think it's always kind of fun for you to compare what things look like from one year to the next. So in this bed, we have the Bloomerang Dwarf Purple lilacs. They're about 3.5, 4 foot tall. We're going to actually trim these back to about 2 foot. So these are reblooming lilacs, and they bloom off of new and old growth. But we're going to go ahead and trim them back because they're just getting too big for this space. And they're starting to crowd out the Maimone Weigela. So the Maimone Weigela was blooming earlier with beautiful pink flowers. And now we are left with its really pretty foliage, variegated green and white with a little kiss of pink on every leaf. Also, we've got an Atlas rose. Look at all those buds. This thing is just waiting to burst forth with color. It's a beautiful peach rose, very fragrant, and blooms throughout the summer. We did tuck some red sun patience in this bed because we really like how the red and the peach look together. Seems kind of like an odd combination, but the first time we did it, we've done it ever since because we love the look of that red and the peach. Continuing down now to the butterfly garden, you'll notice that it is lined with white sun patience. There was one year I tried something different because I thought, Heidi, you need to shake things up a bit. And I didn't love it. So this year, and for many years, this bed here has been lined with the white sun patience. The reason I like white is because it just has a special glow in the night. So as the sun starts to set, all those white colors in the garden really start to pop and kind of give the garden a whole new life. There's the Bobo hydrangea there. Those were trimmed back 2 years ago. And then last year we trimmed them back a little bit, and they're coming back nicely. The Miss Molly butterfly bush, if you watched the last video we did about a month ago, this plant was over 4 foot tall. And I thought, you know what, let's just see what it does. So in Michigan, butterfly bush typically come back from the base, but on occasion, if we have a warm winter, they'll come back off the old growth. And that's exactly what was happening with this plant, is it was coming not only from the base, but also on the old growth. It wasn't coming in very thick though, so I had the gardeners trim this back. This way the plant will be nice and full and not have a lot of that thin or scraggly look going on. Another allium there, gigantica, a bulb. The spagula, little redhead's just starting to put on a little color. That will be prettier in another garden tour. Making our way through the path. Again, you'll just see every edge of this garden is lined with those beautiful white sun patiens. The lupin are blooming. I have kind of a love for lupin. And this one here is really cool. I love the bicolor blooms. The habit of this plant is really nice mounding habit, really unique texture to the foliage. And then when it sends up these beautiful flower spikes, it's just really a different look in the garden. Sonic bloom weigela there in the background is starting to bloom. This is a reblooming weigela. Blooms 3, sometimes 4 times in the summer, depending on how nice the fall is. But a nice full coverage of beautiful pink blooms on that plant. I did see a bloom here on the clematis. So this is a small trellis, and it's not even a trellis. I guess it's another obelisk. And I have the diamond ball clematis and the Viva Polonia. So 2 of them on this little trellis. Right now, Viva Polonia is blooming. Beautiful pink blooms with kind of a white little center there. And look at there, there's a little something eating on here. So I'll have to see once if we need to do something about that. Some more salvia blooming. Tucked in the middle of the garden are some more lupins. These are red and yellow. Ah, my birdhouse totally smashed them. Really pretty. So I'm gonna have to get that thing out of here. We've been meaning to fix it and it's gotta go. I've got some new things that I got in mind for that space. More lupin, purple and white, mixed in with the allium bulbs and the Nepeta cat's pajamas. So lupin are another plant that seed themselves, and I totally am okay if lupins seed themselves in my garden. They are kind of a picky plant though, so a lot of people will say they don't have success with lupin. And I don't know, I think they just kind of like a dry, well-drained soil. That's where I found that they've done best in my garden. This delphinium is coming up, and you can see we've got a tomato cage around it. We want to have that around it so that it doesn't tip over, because these spikes will get up to 5 foot tall as this continues to fill out and grow. See, don't you love how those lupin spikes just look so pretty in the garden? Firelight hydrangea in front of us. This will be showing off in the late summer and fall. And now we're going to head back to the hosta corner. So one thing we noticed in the hosta corner is that over the past few years, we've lost some hosta in this space, because at one time we could not see any ground. It was just solid foliage from the hostas. So there's a lot of new hostas that we've introduced in the past few years that we haven't planted out here yet. So I'm seeing lots of opportunity to plant some of those new hostas in our garden. The thing with this is hostas were never a favorite plant of mine until we did this. I'm loving all the colors, all the textures in this space. They just really play off of each other nicely, creating kind of like a patchwork or a quilt of color. So if you're creating a hosta garden, my opinion is it's important to have various heights, various leaf colors, leaf textures to create just a really beautiful assortment of color. We did tuck an Aurelia Sun King in here right there in the center, because that just breaks that foliage up a little bit and gives us some really pretty bright yellow color in the midst of all these hostas. Making our way around, we have another line of sun patiens. These are the sun patient hot pink, and the border here I think looks nice with the pink because it really is complementary to all the greens in the background. I can't have a totally white garden, got to have a little color in the world. This area has a lot of color in the early spring with the bleeding heart, the penstemon, the heuchera, and even when the hostas are starting to emerge, that lime green is just so beautiful. Also, there's a little bit of Brunera back here, and that too gives a lot of beautiful early color. Here's a few of the Dicentra Valentine that are still flowering. Beautiful little red and white blooms. I just love how those flowers dangle on the branches. That yellow swath you're seeing, that is Dicentra Gold Heart, or Gold Heart Bleeding Heart. And that too, that foliage color just really pops in this garden space. Again, a lot of hostas because this is kind of our only little spot of shade with the exception of under the deck. So we've utilized it to the best we could just to get in all the various hostas. Now, if somebody's going to ask me what hosta is what, I have to tell you, I can't tell you. Because when we started planting these, we weren't smart enough to put plant stakes in. And that's true for a lot of things in this garden. There are no plant stakes. So the things that I know, I talk about, and other things I'll just talk about them as a variety, not a specific variety. There's a lot of anemone in here as well. That's this low growing patch here, and you'll notice how the anemone is kind of spreading. So I will say be careful when planting anemone. Right plant, right place. If you're okay with it spreading around, it's going to do just that. But in the fall or late summer, beautiful pink flowers. So it's really kind of cool to see. I believe that's the lava lamp heuchera in there, the dark orangey burnt red color. A few Nepeta blooming in this space. This area here, again, we put a lot of hostas in to kind of fill it in, but there's also some astilbe that will be blooming at some point. Some spirea, clematis, phlox. A lot of things will be coloring up as the season continues. This patch here is full of daylilies, and so when this goes into full bloom, it is absolutely gorgeous. It does look like we have one starting here, though. This is one of the return daylilies. Possibly red hot returns or rosy returns, which is a reblooming daylily that gives color throughout the season. We're going to head out back past that blue shed there. This shed actually used to be a tool shed until it was taken over with mice, and now it's just disgusting in there. So it's just there for looks. If I open that door, I'm afraid of what might be coming out at me. So that door hasn't been open in quite a few years. Some more lupin. Oh, so pretty. Clematis up there. Where I'm heading to is back by the creek because there's a lot of color. Right up front here, you're seeing a little bit of the quince still blooming, but what I'm trying to show you there is in the background. So I'm going to zoom in. Now I know that quality wasn't great and it's hard to see, but I can't really get in there. That is the Aphrodite shrub. That shrub is over 10 foot tall, probably even taller, and it is just loaded right now with red, fragrant blooms. I'm going to try to get another angle here, see if we can get closer. I don't know, there's a lot of green here, so let's zoom in again and see what we get. I apologize, the quality is just not great. We're going to put a picture up on the screen of that plant so you can see what those flowers actually look like closer up. But there's just beautiful red flowers just up and down the stems of that plant. That plant is at least 10, if not 12 foot wide, where it's at right now, tucked in behind that yellow arborvitae. And even standing in the grass, I could see all of those beautiful red blooms. Stand By Me clematis is blooming. This is a Stand By Me purple. This is a non-clinging clematis, so that's why we have it inside of this little obelisk, or tomato cage also works, to kind of hold it in place because it doesn't twirl around a structure. Tucked in this area of the garden, there's some ornamental grasses, a lot of hardy hibiscus, which will be blooming later on in the summer. We've got some phlox just starting to open up here, some of the opening act phlox. An incredible hydrangea that's full of buds. That's gonna be really pretty with its white blooms once it starts to flower. More of those paint the town dianthus because they're just so pretty. Invincible Spirit hydrangea. That's got buds just waiting to bloom. Rigucci clematis tucked in here. Pretty little purple bell-shaped flowers. The hummingbirds love Rigucci. Baptisia blooming. This is an old variety of Baptisia. I'm not even sure which one it is. It's not one of the proven winner ones. But when you plant a Baptisia, you want to make sure you're planting it in its forever home because they're impossible when they're mature to rip out. So we tried to do that one time and broke I don't know how many shovels, and even putting a tow strap around it did not work. So there's a little piece of advice. Make sure you're planting Baptisia where you want them to be forever. This is an 8-foot clematis wall here, and it's loaded with buds and a few Rigucci starting to want to start to bloom. Probably another couple days and we'll have some nice purple bell-shaped flowers. There are, I think 6 or 8 different clematis planted on this clematis wall, so there's virtually always something kind of in bloom. For those of you who know, this is the point in the tour where the alstroemeria get featured. Here we go. So these alstroemeria are zone 7 or 8. As I mentioned before, we're zone 6A. And look at that. These are coming back. This is the 3rd year. These are only about 12 inches tall when they get to their full height. But these are my bonus plants because typically these shouldn't be coming back in my zone 6A garden. Wine and Roses Weigela. Look at that beautiful thing. This was one of the first shrubs that was planted in this garden bed. This, along with this one, which is Limelight Hydrangea, they were the first 2 shrubs when we put this bed together that were planted in here. So this bed was planted, let's see. My son's 22. He was probably 5 maybe. So 18-ish years ago is how long these have been in this garden. So Weigela Wine and Roses with its deep dark black foliage and beautiful bright pink blooms, a really nice contrast of color in the garden. This is not a reblooming Weigela, so if you need to trim this, we recommend doing so after it's done flowering because this one flowers off of the old wood or the previous season's growth. Limelight Hydrangea was trimmed back a couple years ago, 2 years ago, and it's come back beautifully. This is where I like to say don't be afraid to trim your shrubs because you'll be surprised that they may just come back looking better than ever. More dianthus here. I think these are funky fuchsia. Again, nice and fragrant. Not quite as flowerful though as the Paint the Towns. Incredible hydrangea loaded with buds, just waiting to bloom. Thanks for walking through the garden with me today. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. If you're new to our channel, we welcome you to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.